Hi, Wednesday, the 3rd of April, and I hope you're all doing well. A monologue that I wrote yesterday, and well, here it is. I've been cooked up in the house all day. I'm feeling flat, one of my usual states. I've been trying to rev myself up, crank the engine. But there's no spark, so I'll go out, get some air, wake up. I'll connect with the living, have a coffee. iPod, headphones on, music, Billy Joel, and off I go. I shouldn't bother with the music as it cuts me off, sort of defeats the purpose in a way. It keeps me apart mentally from the environment. I'm walking up a Huza, which is Renana's high street, meandering between shoppers, pedestrians going about their lives. I am physically in the throng, but mentally I feel invisible. But I like it that way. I arrive at my coffee shop. I saunter up to the counter, order an Americano, bli chalav, a little bit of Hebrew there, without milk, and sit in one of my usual spots next to the window. It's extremely difficult to put into words how I feel, to verbalize it so that it truly reflects, 100% reflects how I feel. The feeling is so all-consuming, so personal. It comes from so deep within me, in my heart, in my mind. I was going to say in my soul. We say, don't really use that language these days. In my essence, that I can't appropriately translate it into words. But suffice to say that I feel low, desperately low, sort of hopeless, stranded, alone, lost, out of touch, disconnected from the world's, from life's big ferry-ground rides, the crashing dodgem cars, the merry-go-round, the roller coasters. It's as if it's all going on around me, but I'm not part of it. I'm a ghost, floating through life, watching it, but not a part of it. Shakespeare wrote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." The thing is, I'm not on that stage, and nor am I one of the players. I'm the only one sitting in the theatre, sometimes in the stalls, sometimes way up in the gods, and I'm watching the play. I'm not in it. Enter stage right. A Filipino care worker is pushing a wheelchair in which is sitting a middle-aged guy with what appears to be, and I'm no doctor, some sort of advanced neurological, degenerative, is that the right word, condition. Some, maybe I don't know, maybe a stroke, maybe multiple sclerosis, I don't know. But he's clearly not in a good way. His care worker pushes the wheelchair to the table, and another guy walks up to the table, and sits down. He's clearly a friend of the poor guy, he sits down, as does the carer, and he starts to engage the guy in conversation. The language is English, so I can make out some of it. The guy in the wheelchair can't talk much. His facial muscles have clearly been ravaged by whatever horrible illness has invaded the guy's body. However, inspiringly, the guy does what he can to interact, to communicate, to join in the conversation. He obviously, quite clearly, has not in any way let go of life. He is, or appears to be, genuinely interested in what his friend is saying to him. He's still very much on Shakespeare's life stage. He's still very much one of Shakespeare's players. He's finding it hard to get the words out, to express himself clearly, and there's a real fight in the man. He is full of determination. He's a fighter. I keep trying to glance at him, but of course I don't want to make him feel self-conscious, uncomfortable, conscious of my watching him. I'm not staring at him as a child stares at someone who is different. I'm simply overawed by the fight, the life in this man in the face of such horrible and cruel adversity. I've been slapped across the chops by the juxtaposition of our two situations. Two men, me and him, sitting so close to each other, and yet worlds, universes apart. You see, I've got so much of what he wants. But of course, most of the time, I barely know it. I guess a financial parallel would be this. I'm sitting in this coffee shop with mountains of $100 bills on a table in front of me, a long banqueting table covered not with a tablecloth, but with piles of $100 bills, millions and millions of dollars. Next to me, at the table next to me, is a homeless, penniless man, bedraggled, torn, dirty clothes hanging off a wretched, dirty, unshaven, unwashed, rancid, germ-infested body. We're, 2 meters, 6 feet from each other. Two guys in a coffee shop, but worlds, universes apart. Just as in the case of the poor guy who is next to me, the guy in the wheelchair, I've got so much of what this, in the financial example, of what this penniless guy wants, but I barely know it. Most of the time, am not cognizant of that. I've got so much of what this penniless guy wants that, in fact, he'd be a cock-a-hoop to just have a mere fraction of it, just a few bucks to buy a hot square meal, a cup of coffee, a roof over his head, a shower, some clean clothes, and a bed in which to have a good night's sleep. That would make the penniless guy feel like a king. I don't suppose he would look at the piles of cash and think, I want all of that, I'd love a few bucks, or in this case shekels, to alleviate my current situation. And so back to the guy who really is sitting a couple of meters from me. I keep catching his eye. For a fraction of a second, we're looking at each other. We momentarily connect, and I think he knows what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. I'd give the penniless guy some money, of course, but I can't give this guy some good health. He's in a prison cell, and no one has a key to even let him out to taste 5 minutes of freedom. He's in a prison cell, and relative to him, I am completely free. Situation so different, and yet we're sitting virtually next to each other. I can't help him. I can't help him, and that floors me. So let's just look at what we have here. A guy who would love beyond anything that words can express, who'd love to get out of that wheelchair, which is just a couple of meters away from me, and to walk out of the coffee shop onto a chuzzah. A guy who'd love to be able to move his limbs like the majority of us can. A man who would love to be able to talk and express himself clearly. A man who would consider himself rich beyond anyone's wildest dreams. A man who would float on a cloud of euphoria if he could do the things that I, sitting just 2 meters from him, can do so easily. And there is me, a man who has the things that this guy would love to have. But I am, and thankfully he doesn't know this, I'm ashamed to say, but I'm wasting what he would maximize. I'm wasting that wealth, all in the currency of good health, ability, and relative youth. If he had what I have, if he had it for just 1 week, just a week, my guess is that he'd do more with it than I'll do with it over the course of the rest of my life. Even if I'm fortunate enough to have life, that sort of life, for many, many more years. I have all this currency and I don't know what to spend it on, or probably more precisely, I have good ideas as to what I should spend it on, as to what I want to spend it on, but I'm too frightened to spend it. Why? Why am I too frightened to spend that health currency? I'm worried to spend it in case I lose it. I won't be able to take the good health and the advantages of youth with me when I die. I won't be able to leave it to anyone. When I take my last breath, the last of that currency will go. And that's if I'm so-called lucky to carry on living the life that I can live now. The guy next to me is alive, but his currency of good health has already run out. So I have a responsibility to this guy next to me. I've got a responsibility to myself, a moral responsibility as well. I have all sorts of responsibilities and duties to live my life as this guy just 2 meters away from me, as he would live and lead his life. I don't mean doing the specific things that he wishes he could do. I mean that I have responsibilities and duties to actually do the things that I want to do, not just to dream about them and talk about them and think about them. I mean that I have responsibilities and duties to plan the course and to start moving full steam ahead. To do otherwise seems to me to be an insult and an outrageous on so many levels. The guy next to me, if only he could walk. Well, I can. The guy next to me, if only he didn't have this horrible, debilitating condition. Well, as far as I'm aware, I don't have it. The things I see as hurdles, he wouldn't see them as hurdles. He'd see them simply as my excuses. The Grim Reaper will cut me down sooner or later. That's a fact. He'll fell me with old age or bad health or both. And it'll happen regardless of what I do now, whether I sit at home and just wait for him to get me or live life to the max until he arrives, until he turns up. I visualize my autobiography as having lots of pages, some with words on them, some of them blank. And I guess it's high time that I started putting some words on the blank pages. So they were some thoughts that occurred to me when I was sitting having a coffee yesterday. And this guy who I don't know, who I may not, probably won't ever see again, got me to thinking. Right, so as I said at the beginning, I hope you're all having a good week, and I wish you well. And if you haven't already done so, it would be great if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. As I say, if you're watching this on Facebook, you won't be able to see the subscribe button. So please flick over to YouTube and subscribe. I believe you can't actually subscribe unless you've got a YouTube channel of your own. But anyway, if you can, do it. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Oh yes, I think the camera that I want to get is out now, is available now. It's a new camera just coming out. I think it is out now. So I will get it. And so the production on these things will